Hi everybody, welcome back to Make Do and Mend. I hope you had a lovely long weekend and you didn't miss us too much over our 1 week break last week. We just wanted to take a bit of time to do a bit more planning and figure out what we're going to do over the coming month as we are in another lockdown here in Ontario. So we decided for this week it would be sort of a cozy at-home project and something that you can do using mostly materials that you're likely to have around your house. So I decided on microwaveable heating pads. They're a super easy, beginner-friendly sewing project because it's just a couple of straight lines, a super basic piece of cotton, and some dried grains. I use dried barley in the ones that I make because I find that they hold the heat really well. They're these kind of, it's hard to see, but larger, sort of firmer grain in comparison to something like a rice. I find that rice doesn't hold its heat for super long, and it gets kind of, as it starts to take on moisture, it can kind of get a little bit distorted. Whereas the barley seems to hold its shape really well for multiple years. The ones that I use right now, I'm just going to replace with these, but I've been using since probably 2015. So they do hold their shape really, really well and hold heat really, really well. So I've got one in a sort of smaller style that I've got cut out and just started. And then another one that I'll show you step by step. This larger one here, flip the camera down. This larger one here is a piece of flannelette that's cut 13 inches by 17 inches. And it's 100% cotton. You can use like a flat cotton or a flannelette like I've done, so it's a little softer. Both of them hold their heat about the same. And then this one I think was about 10 inches by 12 inches, and then I've folded it in half so it's 6 inches across. So I'll get this one to this stage here. So just gonna flip it so the right sides are together, and we'll be stitching this end, this bottom end closed, and this long edge closed, and leaving this short end at the top open. So I'll just quickly pin it and stitch it, just using a straight stitch on the sewing machine. If you don't have a sewing machine and you'd like to make your own reusable microwavable heating pad, you can definitely do so. If you have a cotton sock that's still in decent shape, but that's maybe lost its mate, or has maybe its mate has had some wear and tear and the other sock is still intact, you could definitely use a sock and just hand sew the opening closed. I would say don't use any synthetic materials, so avoid using something like polar fleece or a nylon, because this is going to go in the microwave, and I would be a little bit worried about putting something that's basically a plastic into the microwave. But cotton, you don't have to worry. So I'm just going to zip through this straight stitching here. Start with a back stitch, and my seam allowance is at about 3/8 of an inch. then just pivot at the corner here. So leave your needle in the down position, pull up your presser foot, turn your fabric, make sure your presser foot's back down. And before I go right off the edge here, I'm just going to back stitch and then go right off the edge. And I'm going to tie it just so that it's super secure. Normally you wouldn't need to tie the threads at the end of a seam if you've backstitched, but because there's no sewing that's going to go over this part again, it's just a little extra insurance on those threads. And I'll bring you back over here. It's going to be a little bit of pivoting back and forth just because of my setup today. But this corner here, I just want to trim away that excess bulk without getting too close to that seam. And then flip this whole thing right side out. Just poking out the corners as best you can. And sort of making sure it's not folded over on itself on the inside, if that makes sense. And so rather than filling this whole thing with barley, what I've done is I've marked out 2 sections, and these are going to be some stitch lines. So I'm very quickly just going to top stitch right along this bottom edge here, just so that it's like this one. If this seam were to ever fail, it's nice to have an extra line of stitching in there just in case, because otherwise you might have a billion tiny little pieces of barley all over, and that's no picnic to clean up. So let's do that quickly. And it's about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom edge. And I'll trim those threads just to keep them out of the way. And I've got just it's dried hot barley, so it's the slightly bigger barley. Somebody just asked in the comments. I just get it at the bulk food store. Costs about $1 for a pound, I think. So it's not very expensive. This bowl has 2.5 cups of barley in it. I'm not sure exactly how much it'll take to fill, but I have my 1/3 cup measure. And I'm just going to start filling. I think it'll probably take just under 1 cup per section. So that's 2/3 of a cup there. And spilling a little bit of barley. So that's one cup. And I don't want it packed completely full. So I'm just checking at my sort of stitch line that I've marked out to see if that's kind of the fullness level that I'm looking for. And I think that's pretty good at 1 cup. I wouldn't want to go much fuller than that. So I'm going to keep the, I'm going to slide my little free arm off here just so it's out of the way. There's a little less bulk between where my needle is and where the bulk of the barley is. And hopefully you can see that well. And I'm just basically going to follow along this line here. And I'll backstitch to get myself right off the edge so that barley can't escape. And to kind of shift some of it over as you're sewing. Yeah, this is a bit too full here, so I'm going to pour some of this back into my dish. The reason you can't go too full with it is because it's very difficult to stitch closed. So I just poured maybe a couple of tablespoons back into my bowl and have a second go at this. Once all 3 sections are full, it'll seem a lot fuller than it does right now. Right now it seems like there's hardly any in there, but it'll be quite full by the time we get to the end. You want to make sure the barley's well out of the way of where you're stitching, because you don't want to run over a loose piece with your sewing needle either. So you just kind of hold it up so that the barley sort of sinks down into the corner. You can avoid hitting it. And then obviously remove your pins as you're going as well. And once you get to the end, just secure your stitches with a back stitch and clip off that thread. And then do a second line of stitching pretty much right next to it, maybe a 1/8 of an inch away. And again, it's just that extra bit of insurance that that barley won't go anywhere. Shake the barley down into the corner so that you can get your presser foot all the way down. Getting some resistance here. Yeah, I'm hitting something. If you ever feel resistance while you're sewing, stop and investigate. I think I say that all the time, but don't try to push through a problem. Yeah, there's a piece of barley stuck under my presser foot. It's just not letting me go any further. There we go. And another back stitch. All right, so I'm gonna add another 2.5 scoops. Oh boy, my stitching is quite wonky. Add another 2.5 scoops of the barley. And then pin it closed. You can see if you pin sort of a little further away, you can kind of help keep the majority of the barley out of the way of where your stitch lines are supposed to be. Would be a great upcycling project for pajama pants that are maybe too short, but the fabric's still in good shape. You could cut the pajama bottoms off into shorts and then use the legs to make some heating pads. And then you can have a cute matching set without any waste. In the comments, somebody suggested dried lavender. Yes, 100%. If that's something that you enjoy, especially a lot of people like it for helping them sleep, you could put any sort of dried herb like that into the mix for a little aromatherapy. I myself have a scent allergy, so I don't tend to put anything scented into my things like this, but certainly if that's something that you would enjoy. And these sort of branded magic bags, they retail for $25 to $30, and so it's quite a nice thing to be able to make yourself. So with the last one, you'll need to fold it over about an inch at the top. So it's really handy on this one because I have a printed line that I can follow, but you'll need to fold it over about an inch at the top so that you'll have enough seam allowance to stitch it closed. And you can just like kind of press it with your finger and your thumbnail, or if you have your iron handy, you can iron it. And then I like to do that before the barley is in, just so that I have it, I'm not trying to fuss with it while there's a couple of scoops of loose barley kind of roaming around. So I'll take closed like this for sewing purposes. And then I'm also going to do what I did in that middle section where I put a couple of pins across to help keep the barley a bit more contained. Do that double stitch closed. Be cautious here because you're going over extra layers because of how it's folded over. So you might need to kind of coax your machine over that like little ridge. But usually once you've gotten it over, it'll be okay. Stitch, and then it's just that last row of stitching. I'll show you the final product right here. Slip these pins out and clip these threads. And it took just under that 2.5 cups of barley to do this size of heating pad, which was 13 by 17 was the starting size of the piece of fabric. So yeah, it's a quick, easy, beginner-friendly project that's super practical. To heat this up, I usually put it in the microwave for about 1.5 minutes, but it depends on the power of your microwave because you don't want it to be like burning hot or anything because it does go against your skin. So if your microwave has a really low power, you might need a little bit longer. And if your microwave is really high powered, you might only need about 1 minute. So definitely check it for yourself. And that's a microwaveable heating pad. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.